What's up, everybody? Hardcore here. So I talked about the drama in my last video, about this whole drama things that's going on, about how people are taking this game seriously. And I wanted to talk about a personal drama of mine, about an FC I was in, ever since I started playing this Final Fantasy XIV. So, as a whole, like, this whole FC was kind of weird, in my opinion. Ever since I joined, it kind of sounded weird when they greeted me, when they talked about how they want to help me a lot, and how, like, they sounded genuine about helping, but at the same time, I didn't really want help. Like, I joined this game just to have fun. I didn't really actually thought about the whole FC situations. Like, I didn't even know what an FC is until somebody explained it to me in the FC I was in. It's just a whole group, so I was like, yeah, sure, whatever. You can help me. Like, I don't mind. But it started weird. Like, they wanted to help, but at the same time, they wanted to gain something. It felt like they wanted to gain something. And the leader of the group at the time, he started getting closer, as in he wanted to be like, hey, I want to help you. And I told him, hey, dude, listen. Like, I get it. I appreciate your help. But at the same time, I'm good. This game is not hard. I don't see that it is hard. I've been playing games since I was a kid. Nothing seems hard about it. Like, the game even holds your hand till you're, like, in the next expansion. And it started going downhill from here. So I have Sigma 6 with me here. We both were in the same FC. And he even have, like, situation that happened to him. So this leader of the FC told me that if I continue to be, like, a person that helps the FC, or if somebody asks me about this, like, the game, about, like, question about it, and I was like, but I'm new to the game, so why is it me? Like, sure, I have experience, but still, I'm still new to the game. I don't know much about it, and I myself appreciate the help. And he was like, well, if you keep helping people, I'm gonna make you an officer. I'm gonna, like, give you a title. I'm like, at the end of the day, it's just a game, dude. Like, I don't really mind helping people, even if I don't have the title. Which brings us back to where I was talking about the whole drama, or FC drama. That some people take this game way too seriously, and here my friend will bring up the situation about him too having this whole conversation with the FC leaders and the officers. So you want to talk about it, Jeff?
Yeah, sure. So, hello guys, welcome. Thank you for having me back again, Hart. And from the last video that we ended talking about, I know that we're not podcasters. We don't script out anything. We just generally jump on these microphones and just kind of, I wouldn't say rant, but we just talk about some things that we've noticed and we know that other people have noticed. And it seems like a lot of the stuff that comes up, and we kind of figured it's kind of like a round table talk. It's like a discussion that we wanted to see if it was other people that had similar situations or have situations that they can relate to, and it's just like, oh, I know something like this. But I think in any kind of game where you can be a part of a group, guild, FC, whatever people want to call it from. I think this is a situation that I think that a lot of people can relate to, because no matter what group in any kind of video game, I think we've all ran into either groups of people that are like this, or that we've come into just whole entire groups in general that are very, very like this. And I think this is a very relatable subject that a lot of people can have mixed feelings on, or just mixed reactions on, because some people, they just join groups and they don't see anything, right? They don't see beyond the veil. They don't see behind the curtain. They don't see the inner workings. But then some people, this is kind of like they're speculative of what's happening, and they're very interested, But then again, this is kind of like, look, I don't want to have any parts of that. I don't want to get my hands dirty and kind of, brush your hands off with it. And some people are very wise to the situation. Some people are actually involved and know exactly what's going on. So to bring more context to this, we were all part of, well, except for Kaiser, we were part of this group. And the group is all but practically defunct now. It's basically a shell of its former self. But this is just one of those kind of groups that you kind of get in, and it was like it's geared towards helping newer players and stuff like that. And there's I just say it's started off with corruption, it started off with favoritism, it started off with clan wars or like tribal cliques fighting against other cliques, and it becomes gossip. He said, she said, a lot of that different stuff. And that's the reason why I said has a little bit of something that has for everybody that's in here. And any person that jumps in, they can understand.
I'm sure they can
because they've
relate
seen it.
to it.
Yeah, you've seen something of the sort. So to make matters a little bit more clear, I was an officer inside of this FC. Even though it was a short period of time, I was an officer. But basically climbed my way from the very bottom of this FC towards the very top. I was involved in a lot of the intermixings of the FC. And for those that don't know, the FCs are practically guilds. It's just that's what they're called in this game. They're called free companies, so FC for short. And so basically what it was mainly cleaning up, or at least mending the wounds of people and their egos and the relationships that they have with just other people within this game. So with Hart was talking about, especially with the leader of this FC, so when people were coming in, it was basically one of those kind of things that they were building a harem. And it goes to where this person was more lenient towards female players. It's giving female players more of a benefit of the doubt. It's kind of giving them, a little extra, I would say, privileges if you were willing to participate and follow along with certain, I should say, certain guidelines, RP guidelines. So now, I mentioned before in the previous video that we were in, my account was basically ran under 2 people. When I took a break, I lent my character over to another person who was playing this, which was a female, and then myself. So the thing is that the reactions that we got between the 2 of us were very, very different, even though we played the same person. It got so to the point to where we ended up making 2 Discord channels so that way people knew who was playing the character at any one given time. But the thing is that when I was playing the character, I was being treated in a certain way that, the female that was running the character was being treated in a different way. So it got to the point to where I was away from the game for about 4 to 6 months. And this person that was basically running my character, who was a female at the time, she was taking control of a lot of the stuff. So this proposition came along, and it turned out it wasn't just between my character. It's happened to Hart, and it's happened to a handful of other characters, where something kind of happens and you're kind of like, okay, that's shady as shit. But aside from that, she got this offer. It was like, hey, look, we noticed that you're a very active player who wants to be there, who was very interactive between other people. People like you and people respect you. So the thing is now at the time we were just standard members, and we were just initiates essentially. So the offer was, hey, I can make you an officer, for the group, and the only thing that you have to do is just kind of like, look, clarify what do you mean service. And it was just like, I'm not going to ask you to do anything that you don't want to do, but you'll work for me and you'll work for the other officers, which I guess in a sense kind of makes sense, right? But then you can tell that the conversation was leading towards a different thing. So much to the point to where she felt so discomfortable, uncomfortable about the whole situation. She just kind of backed down from it. Was like, no, I just generally was playing the game because I'm taking over the account for another friend who's on break, and I don't think that this person would generally like the idea that they became an officer, and at the end of the day, him being a guy, probably wouldn't serve your needs at the end. So what happens if I accept the offer and I become an officer, and then 2 weeks later he decides that he wants to take over his character again? Are you going to disband him from being an officer because he's no longer going to fit these quote unquote special roles that you're looking for? And he was just like, and then he found out that 2 people were controlling the same character, and he immediately got dismissive about it. So the option never really came up again. And then months later down the line, it was this huge chasm between the new leadership, because it turns out when he stepped down, because he was going to take a break from the game, he ended up passing on the leader to another person who didn't want to become leader. He kind of blackmailed her into becoming the leader. And so eventually this whole drama went down to where it turns out like the cat came out of the bag, and only few people knew about it. Like some of the officers knew about it. You know, so it was like this huge tug of war between who really had control over the free company, because he, even though he wasn't playing the game, he felt like he was still in control of the group. Now, granted, he was the one that formed the group. He was the one that put the people in charge. But then it got to the point where he was trying to hold the group hostage, where he was like, hey, look, I'm just going to contact, you know, Square Enix or whatever, and just basically say that you guys took the group from it. You know, like, hey, look, if you want the group, you want the Discord, you'll have to pay me for it. I mean, granted, he didn't put any money into it, so he was basically holding the group hostage.
Oh, yeah.
And to the point to where eventually a vote came through, and they basically ended up, while this person was still in charge of the FC, changed the name, changed everything, to the point where this person basically got voted out of its own group. Because at this point, he was holding it hostage. And then all these people that were loyal to him, that gave him the offer, or that he gave the offer to, hey, look, you can be officers, I'll put you in positions of power if you help protect me and do what I tell you to do. Now all of a sudden these people started coming out of the woodwork, was like, oh hey, now they're starting, it became like this real civil war. People chose sides. And, you know, people were like, hey, this person screwed me over. This person screwed me over. This person stabbed me in the back. And somehow or another, Hart, who was probably one of the most inconspicuous people in the group, she was just there. She just kind of did her own thing. And it even, like, if you weren't part of a side, then you became an enemy to somebody else. Yeah. And Hart ended up getting drawn into this conflict between another female character. Now, this group was, you know, I should say, a personal part of a lot of people's lives. You know, people will post like the real life photos between them and their families, their pets, the projects that they were doing. And it's no secret, you know, Hart is a cosplayer. So she put a picture in, there was a segment called It's Me. So basically, you know, it's going to show your real life self versus your in-game self. So she posted a photo that was in there, and it wasn't like a tasteless photo or anything. It was just her, and it was just people like, oh, that's cute, that's a beautiful photo. And then out of nowhere, this girl comes out of nowhere, and her boyfriend just starts putting like these emotes in there. It was like a throw up emote. Now this yeah, and this girl was a highly feminized, you know, feminist, which is nothing wrong with that. But when you get on chat and you talk about, you bash namely guys online, and you know, you're like, well, guys aren't really used for anything. Now all of a sudden you have somebody, in a lot of people's opinion, it was, you know, somebody who was sweet, who was innocent, who was a beautiful woman, puts her photo on there, and who knows, maybe she took personal offense that this person, Hart, was better looking. People were giving her comments and compliments. Then all of a sudden she comes in and ruins it. Now it wasn't just her, it was her and her boyfriend. So eventually when somebody was like, yo, what the hell, what's with the emote, and then she was just like, oh, I hate when fake people jump on here and post certain things trying to validate for attention. Right. And this is kind of like, well, it's just a photo.
It's a server that you put your real life pictures in, so it's fine.
So yeah, they were like, we didn't see anything wrong. Why do you have offense with this? So then all of a sudden she started attacking other people that was taking up defense for Hart. Was basically like, hey, it's just a standard photo.
Yeah, basically started spreading rumors about me, about other people.
So then, just like what Hart was saying, then she goes into DMs and starts sending messages to people like, hey, do you know what she really does? Do you know? And none of the stuff was true, but it was just allegations. So it just goes to show just how people just got drawn into this. Now, at the end of the day, when all this stuff was going on, you kind of know when people are saying things. And, you know, sometimes people will come by and mention things to you. Now, there was a lot of people that was in our group that was, I would say, we helped solve situations that nobody asked for. So we figured out somebody got burnt on some mission or something like that. So you kind of come in and be like, hey, what's happening? Wait, how can we help make this situation go down? And when this whole situation with the leader started, you know, holding this group ransom, we decided that there was a lot of people that figured that they got burned. And people got outed. People were like, oh, this person got promoted because they did this for this person. And so a lot of people started leaving the group. So, you know, there was a lot of bad blood. So, you know, we were going through, you know, every month we have team, you know, like free company meetings. And this person will come up and, you know, you see somebody in another group that was part of your group. You got them with a different clan tag by their name. And you'll be like, hey, man, what's going on? I haven't seen you in a while. You're no longer part of the group. You're part of this group. How is everything going? And and it's kind of hard to dismiss it when somebody's like, oh, I see that you're still part of that group. Do you know what happened to me in that group? You know why I left? And you know what they say, first time that somebody, when one person says something, there's plausible deniability. But when there's multiple people saying the same thing, then there's some truth to it. So then for me, I'm just a naturally investigative person. So I'm like, hey, so tell me what happened. Tell me the people involved, and then I will come through and actually talk to some of those people. Now I won't tell them where I got the information from, but I'm just asking just out of curiosity, like, hey man, what happened? And then I'll go to the other person, like, hey, so I kind of heard that this happened, so what's going on? So eventually, like, I started mending these bridges between, these groups of people that I figured like bridges can be mended. So by doing that, the seniors up started seeing that I was a problem solver, and I was able to help create and fix things between certain people. And then it got to the point to where if somebody had an issue, one or a group of the people will come to me and send me messages like, hey, look, this is going on, this is going on. How can we help this situation? What would be your stance on it? So eventually that got me promoted into becoming an officer. So I was an officer, I'll probably say for about 3 or 4 months, where a double standard kind of kicked in. And so what ended up happening, what caused me to lose my leadership, it got to where I got offered to become an officer by the leader, which I was really good friends with. But they just knew that I was one of the problem solvers. They were like, hey, look, this free company, some of the people owe a lot of, due respect for a lot of people know who you are. And, because you're such a, giving person, you want to generally help people and make people's experiences better. Do you want to become an officer? And I was like, sure, I'll become an officer as long as it's cool with everybody else. So eventually there was a vote, I got put in. And so it got to the point to where, like I said, we would stream certain games during Discord or whatever the case may be, where we would just play certain games. Now, one of the biggest games that we were playing at the time was Phasmophobia. And we were doing an interaction, which was Kaiser Hart and myself. And I believe it was like one other person that was part of it. And I'm supposed to change. I've lived my life, who I am, my whole entire life up until this point, being me. Now, I can be the nicest person, I can be the happiest person, I can be the greatest person in the world. But there's a common saying that no matter how good or great you are, there's always going to be somebody who doesn't like you because you are who you are. It doesn't matter what you do, there's always going to be somebody who's going to hate you. Look at Mr. Beast. The guy donates, he gets houses for people, he donates to charities, all that he gives. And there's so many people that hate Mr. Beast for whatever reason. I mean, granted, he could be whatever. He could be a narcissist. He could be ego, but he's given more than what most people have given in their whole entire lifetime. But these people feel like they're justified in the credibility to hate on this person who generally wants to be a nice person and give.
It's the fact that you have to change yourself just because somebody got offended.
Right. So I was like, look, I apologize if this is something that offended you, but I refuse to change who I am as a person. And I was just like, look, I made no mention of going out of my way of hurting somebody's feelings or whatever. And I was like, if it came out of my mouth, I'll own up to it. And I'll take responsibility for it. But not once because because this artificial title that I'm supposed to change who I am to become somebody else, to feel like I'm no longer me. I'm walking on eggshells because I have to live in this life due to this title. If that's the case, I don't want to be this title. Right. No matter what it is. And so eventually got to the point to where the officers kind of stepped in. Like the next following day, the leader contacts me and was like, hey, we're discussing with the other officers on the actions that we're taking that took place, and we're going to come back and talk to you about what we're going to move going forward. And I was like, okay. So eventually it got to the point to where they contacted me again a little bit later on that night, was like, hey, look, I hope there's no hard feelings or anything like that. We're asking you to step down as an officer. And I was like, bro, that's totally fine. I get that that's what the decision is going to be. But the thing is that if I get judged based off of something that was taken out of context, because of something that somebody felt like they're offended. Now, I'm not saying that somebody's not entitled to the right to being offended. That's fine, because you can't stop that. Right. But the thing is at least if I'm going to lose my position for it, there should be some kind of defense that I should be allowed to clarify or clear my name in the process of doing that. And I was like, and I wasn't given that chance. It was like this internal thing that felt like I was the reason, like, this thing that I did was, I went so far beyond the line that I was irredeemable. And therefore, my defense, I didn't have a defense. I was just prosecuted on the spot. It's to the point to where if it felt like I was being prosecuted without having, without having a proper trial or defense, if I'm going to be the martyr, if I'm going to be the scapegoat for it, I'm like, fine. All right, so I think that people tend to take this game way out of context, or at least they live in a game to where it starts to substitute for the real life. And first and foremost, I think the game is, number one, a game. Now, granted, people do develop real life relationships within these games. It is a community based game.
Right.
There's a lot of personal interactions. And there's a lot of personal friendships. There's people who have met and fallen in love. There's people who've gotten married in game who turned out to have married in real life. And those kind of connections are genuinely heartwarming connections. We all strive to build a community and connect with one another. But then at the end of the day, people live in this fantasy land where that this game substitute for the real life, and their reactions, I believe, are oftentimes not warranted based on the fact that it's a game. I think people are too sensitive nowadays. People are way too offended, or is it overly offended about things that if they can't control it, then why waste your time, energy, and effort on it? And I think that's one of the key points that happens in this game is just like this game, and not just this game, other games like it, that people allow things to interfere with their real life that it shouldn't. And I think that in this game in general, people have taken that and run away with it, where people are gossiping about people in like the real life world and how it interferes with their game. Mm-hmm. So it no longer just becomes a game. And I can understand where people get offended and get upset if they're bullied and that kind of stuff, because that's real life interactions. That can happen online, that can happen physically, whatever the case may be. I can understand those. But when you get people where they're literally hashing it out with people, and you're talking about like, I'm going to end you in real life, and it's like, bro, it's a game. Why would you allow yourself to get that upset, number one, over actions of people I can't control the actions of others. I can't, let alone I can't control the actions of others online in a video game. There's only so much interaction that you can do and so much level of control that you can have. And I think people just they're so sensitive to the point to where they allow this world, or the gaming world, to rule the world that they're supposed to be in, a world that you can control things. You have some level of degree.
Everybody is different. Yeah. Like, people need to know in gaming, especially in gaming, any type of game, not just Final Fantasy XIV. Like, people are different, and you have to know that, because if anybody is going to agree with you, then what's the point of everybody is like special, everybody has their personality. It's just, not everybody is going to agree with you, and that's fine. That's just what makes us.
And that way you can kind of leech abilities from off of other people. They can teach other people. We know it's near impossible to not offend anybody.
Right.
Everybody's offended about everything.
While this is about Final Fantasy XIV, what Sigma was pulling from is playing a different game inside of the FC's Discord, somebody else jumping in to watch, not liking what she heard Sigma say, went to the higher-ups, and they sided with the other person without any clear context of what was going on, and without giving Sigma any due diligence to, plead his case for the most part. Like, they let him, but then they just were like, nah, we're going to go with the other person. And then you have one girl who wants to manipulate everything so she can be the biggest person, separate from these other two.
This time, like, if people like seeing this stuff, or like want us to do more of our stories or what happened in this game and all that stuff, make sure to like and sub if you want more content of this. Also, I'm going to put Sigma 6 and Kaiser's links, their Twitch link. They're good streamers. We're all streamers. But I'm going to start making content on YouTube, like about Final Fantasy XIV, other games. Also joining me Sigma and Kaiser. But if you guys want more of this content, I can post more. I'll make a playlist of it, but that's just our experience in the game. So don't forget to like, sub, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care. Bye bye.
Deuces.
Au revoir.